Alright, let's dive into this explainer. You know, we always see the fancy state dinners and those stiff diplomatic banquets, but today we're looking past all that. We are digging into what the leaders of the free world actually ate when the cameras stopped rolling. We're talking about the culinary habits of US presidents, and trust me, it's a wild ride from squirrel stew all the way to modern cheeseburgers. So, what actually fuels the leaders of the free world? You might automatically assume it's just endless caviar, filet mignon, and champagne, right? Well, as we're about to see, their actual diets are often highly relatable, sometimes surprisingly extravagant, or frankly just downright bizarre. It turns out the food fueling historical decisions is rarely what you'd expect. Here is how we're going to break down this amazing history. 1. Simple tastes and minimalists. 2. Feasts, meat, and appetites. 3. The ultimate sweet tooths. 4. Strangest presidential diets. And 5. The modern fast food era. Let's get right into it. Section 1. Simple tastes and minimalists. It's wild to see the stark contrast between these guys. Take Abraham Lincoln, for instance. He was a very sparse eater, barely ate at all actually. But when he did, he preferred super simple things, like chicken fricassee or maybe just a bit of bacon. But then you have William Taft. This guy had a massive appetite. He famously put away a heavy 12-ounce steak for breakfast, lunch, and dinner every single day. Talk about drastically different engines, right? This brings us to what we can playfully call the Cracker Barrel motif. You see, a ton of our historical figures gravitated toward hearty, down-home cooking, the kind of stuff that would look perfectly at home on a modern Cracker Barrel menu. They really didn't want elegant European-style dishes. No, they wanted warm, rustic, stick-to-your-ribs meals. The crucial takeaway here is that presidents like Polk, Johnson, and Harding were honestly just big fans of rustic, everyday comfort food. James Polk, he was all about cornbread and vinegar pie. Andrew Johnson was a huge fan of Hoppin' John, which is a really classic, humble dish made of rice and peas. And Warren Harding craved chicken pot pie, knockwurst, and sauerkraut. These men kept it incredibly down to earth. Section 2. Feasts, meat, and appetites. Now, if it was an animal, McKinley, Roosevelt, Taft, and Truman were more than happy to make it the absolute centerpiece of their meals. I mean, McKinley was famous for hosting these giant, meat-heavy breakfasts, and Teddy Roosevelt, he could supposedly take down more than an entire fried chicken in a single sitting. We already touched on Taft's crazy 3-a-day steak habit, but we absolutely can't forget Harry Truman. He loved his well-done steaks and strictly demanded that his favorite meatloaf be served entirely without onions, no exceptions. To really put the sheer scale of their appetites into perspective, just look at Teddy Roosevelt's 42nd birthday. He sat down to a staggering 6-course feast. He kicked things off with Blue Point oysters, moved right along to green turtle soup, enjoyed a fillet of beef cooked under glass, and then rounded the whole thing out with quail. I mean, that is a menu that completely redefines the idea of a birthday dinner. Moving on to Section 3, the ultimate sweet tooths. 300,000. That is the staggering number of jelly beans bought each and every single month during Ronald Reagan's presidency. They filled the White House, they filled the Capitol buildings. He loved them so much that over 3 tons of red, white, and blue Jelly Bellies were shipped in just for his inauguration. It's honestly just an incredible image, imagining the highest offices of government practically running on little sugar beans. But hey, while Reagan had his jelly beans, leaders like Madison, Monroe, Tyler, and Hoover were also famous for demanding incredibly rich, sugar-heavy treats. Take James Madison. He was known to love oyster ice cream, which, yeah, I know, sounds totally wild today. James Monroe preferred the rich, heavy sweetness of spoon bread. John Tyler served his sugar pudding pie so often it actually became famous. And Herbert Hoover? He had his very own special recipe for marshmallow-topped sweet potatoes. Section 4. Strangest presidential diets. Okay, let's get into the weird stuff, because some of these would definitely not fly today. We're talking about everything from Richard Nixon's frankly unappetizing breakfast of cottage cheese covered in ketchup, to a weirdly common historical fondness for squirrel soup. Seriously, both James Garfield and William Henry Harrison regularly ate squirrel. Now, to be fair to them, it was much more common in certain parts of the country back then, but it's still a bit of a shock to our modern sensibilities, right? Oh, and Chester Arthur, he just liked eating a single mutton chop for dinner, just one, all by itself. But perhaps the most unexpectedly gross reveal is James Buchanan. He bypassed extravagant meats entirely to just feast on straight butter and cabbage. Let that sink in for a second. The man hosted these incredibly extravagant dinner parties, but his own personal favorite combination was just Philadelphia butter and plain cabbage. Truly a baffling culinary choice. And speaking of baffling dairy choices, check out this number, 1,400. That is the exact weight, in pounds, of a massive wheel of cheese that Andrew Jackson unapologetically served at a White House party. Literally just imagine walking into a highly formal state function and being greeted by a 1,400-pound block of cheese. You can't make this stuff up. Of course, sometimes the strangest dietary habits are actually food aversions. This is beautifully summed up by George H.W. Bush's iconic and frankly hilarious anti-broccoli rant. He basically said, "I'm the president of the United States and I'm not going to eat any more broccoli." It just perfectly captures how even the most powerful people in the world have absolute lines they refuse to cross when it comes to their dinner plates. Section 5. The Modern Fast Food Era. We can literally trace the historical shift of American dining right through the Oval Office. It's fascinating. We move from the rustic Hoecakes of the 1700s with Washington straight into the modern era of fast food presidents. Interestingly, the truly relatable touchpoints really kicked off with Franklin D. Roosevelt. He basically ate off the kids' menu. He favored the ultimate classics over anything overly sophisticated. He didn't want some 6-course quail feast. He just wanted a really good hot dog, some scrambled eggs, or a grilled cheese sandwich. Decades later, that trend absolutely exploded. Whether it was Bill Clinton's famous McDonald's runs, George W. Bush's highly specific cheeseburger pizza, which was loaded with pickles and mustard, by the way, Barack Obama's nachos, or Joe Biden's famous love for ice cream, the modern presidency is undeniably fueled by accessible comfort food. Today's leaders are literally grabbing the exact same quick meals from the drive-thru that we are. So I leave you with this to ponder. Based on everything we've unpacked in this explainer today, from squirrel stew and giant cheese wheels, all the way to ketchup-covered cottage cheese and modern drive-thru cheeseburgers, what do you think the next generation of leaders will crave when they make world-changing decisions? The history of presidential plates tells us it could be absolutely anything. Thanks for joining me on this delicious and occasionally bizarre journey.